if you can manage those two of the quantitative and the qualitative of it, the people science management against the numbers, you can find you can do some pretty interesting things when it comes to scale and building. Really, my philosophy is it's simple. It's hire the right people and let them work, right? So bring in the right people, give them the right environment, put the right guardrails and tools around them so that they can be successful, and then manage accordingly as you go through. I'm a firm believer in the following, is that yes, we have to manage by numbers. We have to understand what's going on with the business to pull the proper levers and so forth. But however, if your people aren't happy and they're not feeling productive, then all the rest of it isn't going to work. So I'm a firm believer in making sure the right folks are hired into the proper positions, and then you give them the latitude and the availability to be successful in their jobs. And if you can manage those two of the quantitative and the qualitative of it, the people science management against the numbers, you can do some pretty interesting things when it comes to scale and building.
Okay. So it's this idea of embarking trust.
Lots of trust. Yeah. So trust and verify, right? So entrust in your people, give them the right tools and technology and the equipment, right? Compensation and all the rest of it, hire the right people and put them in, and then give them a transparent environment where everybody can see everything that's going on, right? So entrusting in them and then giving the tools that you can manage so you could see the business thoroughly through and through, but not just with them, but with the entire organization, so that there's a lack of it being opaque, so to speak. And if you can do that and you have high performers, then what they'll do is that they'll continue to reach new levels and break through glass ceilings.
Yeah, okay, that's great. I'm interested in how this applies to this building phase that you so enjoy, and the effect, the benefit of having folks who have the initiative and who you trust to have initiative on. You know, how those two things work together, and then how you bring these folks in, your reps, your team, into helping you be a builder.
Great question. So you can't do it on your own. That absolutely doesn't happen. You can't, and it can't really be a dictatorial environment to where you're just telling people what to do all day, because that single threaded approach to it just being one person making all the decisions will inevitably slow down scale and building, right? So you have to look for the right types of folks, like we talked about earlier, right? Other builders, people that like to work in team-based environments, right? Because when you're building, it's never linear, right? And it's never fluid, and you don't know what you don't know, because there's always going to be something that's going to come up quite frequently that you just couldn't predict, or you wouldn't see. For example, COVID, right? Nobody could have predicted COVID, right? And here we are, we rolled in last year into COVID, we locked everything down. I, in general, come out of inside sales environments where we all sit next to each other, we're constantly with each other. And then we went to a distributed model where everybody was spread all over the place. And what we found is that by hiring people that had been in high growth environments before, that had managed very particularly to private equity models, right? So flat, linear, growth oriented, right? Candidly, with limited resources. Right. So we had to hire the right type of folks. And especially going into COVID, we had to make sure that the right people were entrenched into the right positions, and they were given the latitude to make the decisions based upon the data that we were giving them. Right. And as a result, when we went into COVID last year, and nobody could have predicted it, right? The business in the US doubled. Right. Now, some of that for our teams was as a result of buying behaviors changing, right? People going more online, doing more searching. We're all working from home. We're forced to do so. However, the teams also had to adjust, right? And they had to adjust from working from home, higher volumes, seeing more different types of customers, different mixes and so forth. And we successfully did it from a building perspective, right? And a lot of that had to do with is the plans were specific. We didn't cut, right? We stayed focused. We stayed within the boundaries that we had laid out last year, and we actually, increased headcount, increased transactions, increased volume, increased sales, everything you could profit, everything you could possibly think of.
Yeah, it's a huge success story. So congratulations. Earlier you mentioned guardrails, and then just then you mentioned that the parameters that we set. So we're talking about hiring folks with initiative and giving them that trust. How do we balance, I suppose, keeping folks in the line or the direction we need them to go in, but then also letting them find their own journey there? As a leader, how do you balance those two things?
Well, really good questions, right? So when I say guardrails, it's a lot of it's based on math, right? You look at historicals, where the business has been, what has been done, and then where do you want to go to, right? What is it that you're looking to accomplish? Are you looking for double-digit growth, or are you just looking to hold the line, or and so forth? And based upon that is where you put in guardrails, everything from pricing to compensation, right? To hiring, to markets, to segmentation analysis, and so forth, right? So if we look into a certain segment that we have low penetration in, right? Do we then double down into that segment from marketing and sales ops and sales and so forth to then, go deeper within that segment? If we then have other segments or regions and so forth, and we know that we have a tremendous amount of penetration, right? What do we do? What type of guardrails do we put in for our teams, right? From pricing, from promotions, right? From hiring, from compensation and so forth. And that's when I'm talking about guardrails, that's what I mean.
Okay. So the data is often the North Star or the way you navigate through.
Absolutely. Right. So it's funny is that I'll talk to people and they'll say, man, you don't seem like a sales guy. Right. I get that all the time. I came up through sales, which makes it's pretty funny. But I think what's happened here over the years, Tom, is that the businesses have changed, right? We have more visibility. We see more. I honestly believe that the old days of pounding your chest and screaming and yelling and trying to get people motivated and so forth is passe. I do. I believe if you look at the markets properly, you position your teams properly, and as a leader, take responsibility for it, that they're moving down the right trail, then you'll see results. If you do not see results, which happens, make decisions fast, right? Course correct immediately. Move things down into a vein and or into a channel that you believe are going to yield, and then put your people in the right place to go and do so and win. But I think a lot of it comes to responsibility from a leadership perspective, honestly, and data. And it's not, data is never the best anywhere. I don't care where you work, right? However, if you can go back and look at historicals and then look at total addressable market and verticals and so forth, you can get a pretty good idea of what's going on, and then be willing to share that with your team. To then get in, that 360-degree feedback of, are you seeing what I see? Sharing it across the board, opening it up to what we used to call in our old place I was at, thrashing, right? Thrashing around ideas, whiteboarding, right? Taking it from a whiteboard to an MVP to a beta, alpha to a beta and so forth, and getting the programs off. But you have to do that in a team environment with data, right? And with everybody working off of those same data sets, regardless of what they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was going to say, this sounds like it comes into your transparency piece. So the data, how you bring your reps into how you're performing, the direction you might be going in, and some of the strategies you might need to set.
Yeah, so it's interesting is that we do here once a month, we do a look back with the entire team. It's everybody, reps, managers, directors, whoever else wants to join, right? And what we'll do is at the end of the month, product called postmortem, right? Or other teams where we do look back at every month. We call it a celebration meeting, but however, it's giving everybody at every single level complete transparency into our line of business. Here's where we were at. Here's what we did. Here's what's working. Here's what's not. Please give us feedback. And then we have leadership roundtables, so to speak, that leaders in the teams, those that have been around a while, get a chance to be able to share what they're seeing and what they're hearing. We then break that down to a weekly, right? Until we get weekly voices of our customers. What are the customers telling us? What is sales telling us, and so forth? And trying to close that loop all the way through, and then we could feed that back to marketing and product and so forth. So we're all on the same page.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. I like how you're breaking this down. I was going to ask, sometimes the challenge for folks when we're talking about data and reps is communicating the data in a way that's understandable for folks as they're learning about this. So how do you make data chunked down so it can be understood by everyone? And how do you tell a narrative of what the data means? Like you said, it's not always perfect. It can be complicated. There can be lots of data points. It can tell us lots of different stories.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, so I manage really off of 4 or 5 data points, and I learned that years ago. There's thousands of data points under the hood, right? We all know that. Different lines of business globally, everywhere. It's, you know, but there are usually 4 or 5 pieces of data that move, right? And if you think about SaaS or where we're at now, CAC LTV, lifetime value of customers, cost to acquire them, how long were they with us, what do our conversion rates look like, and so forth. Simplifying it down to those 4 or 5 digestible pieces, because if I'm simple in that respect, and I need to see things in a simple format and visually. And so we try to break it down to a point where it's those 4 or 5 data pieces that are actually moving our business. And that's what we share all the way up and down the chain. And then we get input from everybody. Are you actually seeing this as well? Does this look valid to you? And I'll give you an example. When I started here, we hadn't moved. We're in a BI environment now, right? And we didn't have BI. We didn't have really high level reporting, right? It was more about transaction count. Are you getting to plan? Transaction count. Are you getting to plan? It was more reactionary versus being in a proactive environment. And I went and I visited with a lot of our top sales folks and managers and so forth and said, what do you think the businesses look like? How do you think that they're running? And got a myriad of responses, because I want to hear from them when I first started, like, what are you seeing? And then connecting with our top customers, talking to them, what do you see in the business and so forth. And what was interesting is when we compiled it all together and we mashed it up and put it into a digestible format and graphs, year over year cohorts, by the way, which are very important so people can see here's where we were last year versus this year, and then delivered it out to the team, the senior level folks that have been here, and on the team in particular that I'm thinking about, their average tenure is over 8 years, right? That's a lot in sales, right? And so when they saw the data, they were surprised. They were like, wow, that's really how our business is operating? First, they challenged it, right? No way, that's crazy, that can't be. Okay, what can't be right? Let's go through it, let's talk it through. And then we all came to a consensus of what we believe was operating the business from the rep level to the manager all the way up. And now everybody looks at it and it's like, yeah, that looks about right. And the business has changed. And from that day, which was almost 2 years ago now, to where we're at now, I think a lot of that transparency and the process and the easy analytics and so forth have really moved the needle in this business. And we're up 2 times. I think we were talking about this earlier, Tom. The teams in the US over 2019, a non-COVID year, we're up 2x. Why? It's nothing magical. It's not like I came in and all of a sudden I'm selling all the customers. It doesn't work that way. It's having the right people, giving them the right transparency, right? And the right guardrails, and letting them see the business top to bottom as everybody else does, and things start to change. Like, here's how your customers are behaving. Here's how they behaved last year. What do you believe you need to do to increase or hold the line and so forth? And it just gives them the ability to really do their jobs and do them effectively.
Yeah. It's amazing what stories data can tell us we hadn't even realized. Yeah, great epitaph there. This sounds like it's an interesting opportunity for coaching and development of future leaders, because you're getting so much feedback from your reps and really hearing what they have to say. I'm really keen to hear how this works into your nurturing of future sales leaders here.
Oh, that's a really good question. So I'll give you an example. We'll just stay in the US and not go globally. In the US, we had 1 sales manager, right, and a team. This is back in 2019. Now in the US, we have about, it was 1 sales manager and 10 reps, right, approximately. We now have 5 sales managers and almost 50 reps, right, in 2 years in the US. How does that happen, right? Where do you find quality people? And we found in I think our entire team now was grown internally, so organically. Now we interview people externally just to benchmark and so forth, but all of our promotions have been internal. And the way it started was a few years ago. There was 1 manager, right? I asked her, do me a favor, poll your team, see what they want to do. What are their career aspirations? What does people want to do? Can we start career pathing? What does it look like, right? And then we started career pathing programs back then. Now all the managers, all the other 4, they were all career path internally, because At one point or another, they raised their hands and said they wanted to move into leadership. We then dropped them into where the leadership roundtable that I had mentioned earlier, right? Gave them projects and bits and pieces to work on all the way through, right? To test and measure to see if, are they the right fit? Is this really something that's for them? And then mentoring them all the way through by then giving them more and more responsibility, more and more. I mean, seriously, as much as they could possibly take, because there's a theory in hiring is that you want to give a candidate or the next person up as much as they possibly can handle until you start to see diminishing returns, right? So we open the kimono completely to this team, to the future leaders, and say, you sure this is something you want to do? Because here's what it takes. And then bissel by bissel and part by part, bringing them in and completely opening the kimono. And honestly, some of them tapped out and said, no, I want a career path to enterprise level sales. I want to just stay at what I'm doing. But then there was that core mix of those that thought it was interesting, and that's how we promoted up, and that's where we found our teams and our future leaders, and we're continuing to do that as we go forward. That same process, identifying future leaders, asking them if they, I'm more of the hand of, versus me telling you you're a leader. Do you raise your hand? Yes, that's something I want to do in the future. Great. Bringing them through, putting them in the round table, seeing how they react, giving them bits and pieces of everything from, can you build a PowerPoint and a couple of slides to give us a SWOT analysis of the market, who our competitors are? Can you present that out to the group? And if they can do that, then okay, here's a little project that we have running on the side that we need help with. Could be BI, could be analytics, could be something else, giving them a little bit more visibility. Oh, and by the way, we're moving into a new market. We just opened up Mexico. Do you want to help screen candidates? Do you want to work with them? Do you want to see what they look like? And we bring them all the way through, because at the end of the day, we don't have a formal leadership training program. We've built it ourselves as we've gone forward, but it does tend to work. And then when they get to the end of it and they've seen candidates, they've done the analytics, they understand how the business works, they've managed the largest customers that we have, and they've shown that capacity to lead and the passion for it, they're probably next up. And then we put them through the interview processes when jobs open up. And then what happens is they see their cohorts, other people just like them, getting promoted. And it really drives a high energy and exciting environment. Then the next thing you know is those future leaders that want to move into those positions because they're at that same level, now they're helping their managers. Now they're out working with the other reps, right? They're out plugging things together. And we are in more of a proactive environment now than we are reactive, right? Less complaining and more, here's what we need to fix. Here's what we need to do.